Hey everybody, welcome. This is another Pearl webinar where we get to spend the next hour or so. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's shorter, but Ryan and I will introduce any of you who are new to Epiphan or new to the Pearl family to what it's all about. And for those of you who are familiar with the product line, we're sitting here, I'm monitoring chat. We'll do any questions. So those deep, dark, weird questions you have about how you're using these Swiss Army knife products of ours, we want to hear it, and we'll try to get to the bottom of anything you might wonder about. So,
for sure.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've got a squeaky chair.
Well, now it's not squeaking.
We'll find out if it shows up in today's webinar. You can. That's the kind of shade you can throw at us during a live show if you hear it. So. Make sure you ask your questions in Crowdcast. You can use the comment feature. You can use the questions feature. We'll be keeping an eye on it all. Yep. And we've got some moderators behind the scene who can also help to answer some of those questions. And we have Ryan, who talks to customers.
Most of the time, I'd say.
Most of your life is spent talking to Pearl customers. So I'm pretty sure there's nothing you haven't heard yet, right?
Maybe. We'll find out today.
Yeah, we'll find out today. Yeah. And I see lots of people joining from all over the world today, which is great. I see Hussam from Germany, I see Michael from Vancouver, and Stefano from Rome, and Ryan from Minnesota. Lots of great people joining us. Thanks so much for being here. We'll try to make this as efficient as possible, and let's get into it and give people a chance to understand really what this Pearl family is all about. So maybe you can kick things off. We do have a couple of slides to help illustrate things, so we'll show that now. But Ryan, the Pearl lineup. What's it all about?
The Pearl lineup. Well, the Pearl lineup is, reliable, high-performance hardware for video production. If you wouldn't mind switching the slide there, George.
Yeah. Yes, and we always put this slide at the beginning of our deck here because we want to talk about how we're really about broadcast without barriers, which is about making video accessible for anybody who has ambitions to do creative things with video. We empower those people with those trusted, innovative, and intuitive solutions. And we're going to try and prove these three words to you today. So if by the end of this, you don't think that our products are intuitive, trusted, or intuitive, we want to hear that. So that's our goal today. And we'll talk all about what that means, whether it's this single point of control from the front screen of the device, or the powerful admin side, or the reliability of these devices. You'll hear us talk about how they're used aboard the space station. You'll hear us talk a little bit about how they're used in underwater applications, all kinds of crazy places where people are making video content. They have pearls alongside them. So that's a hallmark of what they're all about. So that's our kind of spiel to kick things off. But Ryan, let's get into the nuts and bolts of things and tell people a little about what these devices are.
Yeah. So we have the Pearl family of devices, and there's really four that we have here. And these systems are really supposed to be versatile, reliable, easy to use, and professional quality. They're all encased in metal, and they're meant to be used in these environments that are running 24/7. And that's kind of where we see our devices most often, especially our rack-mounted Pearl 2 and our Pearl Nexus. It's meant to go into these environments and just you set it up and you forget it, and it just works, and it works every time, and that's the way we like it to be. So, and we've really built our Pearl devices off of an open ecosystem. So there's no vendor lock-ins, and maybe you can go to this slide here, George, so we can just show it really quick. So there's no vendor lock-ins or proprietary protocols for Epiphan devices. We integrate with Kaltura, Panopto, Yuja, OpenCast. You can use them with Extron, Crestron, QSys controls. All those control systems have modules built in that allow for this simplified way of controlling our devices kind of right out of the box. And a whole REST API in the background. So you can create your own your own way of controlling things to really tailor that user experience to your environment, whether it's a UX or maybe it's a classroom or a podcast studio or things like that. A good case would be G-Man Studios, who uses our devices to do podcasts and remote recordings. He can create this whole environment and create it how he wants it to be. using our REST API and in our devices.
So that's kind of what Ryan has set up here today. So in a way, we're also demonstrating what Pearl is like in that I've actually got I'm able to do the switching all right here through a stream deck, and I can see all the controls for Pearl here. So there is no producer behind the scenes today, which we sometimes have. So you'll see my head go up and down here a little bit throughout the show, but it also goes to show you can just take one of these devices set up and go ahead and make stuff on your own.
Absolutely.
Which is not the most common application, but there are places where you want these devices just to be able to operate in a room with someone to come in and push a button and make it go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the models. We've got them all here on the desk in front of us, but maybe you can give the rundown of the differences.
Yeah, so the Pearl systems really scale across different use cases, starting from a single channel, single layout device up to a 6-channel, multiple layout device. And so, a couple things we really want to focus on today is, what is a channel and what is a layout? And those are really the most important things. Reason being is that a channel is essentially your encoding instance. So what I mean by that is that it's where your recording and your streaming and everything occurs. And then you have your layouts, which your layouts are essentially your kind of like a slide deck, building slides in your slide deck. So completely customizable. You can have video sources, you can have video sources, you can have audio sources, MP4, IP inputs, things like that, and you create that to be able to switch between those things on the fly. Pearl Mini, Pearl Nexus, Pearl 2, those are switchers built in. And then the Pearl Nano, that is your single channel device, which could be at the end of a existing single chain or otherwise. So. And I think that's a good point to jump right into the devices going from there.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got a Pearl Nano on a desk here.
Yep.
Maybe we can show people a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so we have the Pearl Nano here. So this is a nice portable 4K device meant for streaming, recording, H.265 encoding. So it's really meant to be optimized for that kind of environment where you might have a limited bandwidth. You could do H.265 encoding and basically cut your bandwidth needs in half. You have standard inputs on the back here, if you wouldn't mind moving the slide there. Standard inputs in the back here, and the cool thing about the Pearl Nano is it can be powered by a PoE Plus with a HDMI pass-through. So this is, you can connect it to a switch that's PoE, you don't need to worry about running power to it, and it has that line-level audio, professional line-level audio, which you can connect your XLR sources to. So typical use case we'd see, a couple sources hooked up, audio mixer, running audio and video into the Pearl. This could be downstream from a switcher. It could be maybe a smaller scale event with a couple video sources where you just need like a picture-in-picture or maybe full frame camera. And then you can stream out and you have those 2 HDMI outputs that you could use within the room, and all recording is to SSD or SD card depending on what your preference is.
Mm-hmm. One of our customers who we wanted to highlight is the Heffel Auction House. And there goes my squeaky chair, sorry about that. So this is a pretty fascinating use case where this company is selling some of the most famous artworks you've ever heard of in the world, and they want to appeal to as many buyers as they can. So of course they use live streaming to reach that audience. But they are Heffel. They're a really high-profile company with a high-profile product that they're trying to sell, so they need to have the highest quality streams. So they use multiple Pearl Nanos in those different studios to bring together this hybrid production. And they pull it all together, and they make hopefully gobs of money for this beautiful artwork that they sell.
Yeah.
But it's a nice use case for people using Pearls, and we see them used anywhere people are trying to do streaming and recording where they want just a real reliable solution for that, and they don't want to mess around. A Pearl's a really pretty easy way to get started with that. And last but not least, it does come in a rack shelf. So if you want to put a couple of these in a rack, or if you want to stack them up, you can kind of scale your operations that way as well.
Yep, for sure. This kind of thing is great for, say, if you have like maybe you want to build like a modular rack that goes in between events. You could have 6 nanos in one rack. And then depending on your needs for that event, you could hook up as many nanos as you'd like. Maybe it's 4, maybe it's 6 one day, maybe it's 2 another day. You can do ISO recordings right with one rack at a smaller scale, taking up 6 U of space of 6 devices. And you can do that up to 4K for each one of them. So just a great capabilities of the device and a smaller form factor.
So if you pull up the back shot of that, I'm going to pull up there's a question here. Where's that shot? Is it this one here?
That one there.
That one? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Someone was asking what's the difference between an HDMI pass-through and HDMI out? Ryan, maybe you could just talk about that for a sec.
Focus.
And what's the difference between autofocus and no focus? That's the demonstration.
Maybe we'll just
here.
let it sit here. There we go. Maybe I'll move this one out of the way here, and we'll see if we can get that to come in. There we go. Yeah, so HDMI output would be your programmed output. So this is really your, if you want your channel, if you want your an input, say you want to play out an SRT input, you would use the HDMI output. This is going to have an encoding delay on it of some kind. So we're going to have anywhere between 150 to 300 milliseconds delay because it's going through the encoding pipeline. A pass-through is kind of like an HDMI splitter. You run your HDMI input in, it takes it's pretty much zero latency right out of the system, and you can put it out to a projector, a display, or maybe even to another device that, in the environment. So that's really the main differences there between the two.
Nice. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
No problem.
Okay, so we're talking a little bit about Nano, then we move up the scale a little bit. What's the next Pearl on your list here you want to highlight?
The Pearl Mini.
Pearl
the
Mini.
true tried and tested.
Yes.
So the Pearl Mini is really kind of your true Swiss Army knife. This is where you're going to see this in shared environments. You're going to see this in places where this needs to be plopped into new environments, and you're just looking for it to work with what you have. You connect microphones right to it. It has a preamp inside of it, phantom power. So this has been used a lot in churches, on podcast studios, and on a lectern, that you just want the easiest use possible with the device itself. It can be controlled by API, but if you don't need that, then you have a screen here. You can pretty much control the system right off of that. It is a 3-channel device, so going back to what a channel is, it's basically an encoding instance. So Pearl Mini is the first step into where we have a multi-channel device. So what that means is that we can have up to 3 ISO recordings running at the same time. We could have a program running at the same time as recording ISOs of 2 cameras. So it allows you to run an event, but as well as control and record everything that's occurring in that environment. And that, typically we see SDI, HDMI sources. Pearl Mini can ingest NDI-HX, SRT, RTSP-IP sources as well. And you could record to an SD card. And starting from June, I think, this year, all Pearl Minis can also have SSDs installed into them if you'd like. And has HDMI output port for distributing to the environment, or maybe to a capture card connected to a computer running to a Zoom meeting, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be my favorite Pearl because it is so tactile that way, and that you can program this and set it up so that really anybody can use it with this big start streaming button or start recording button. You can lock this thing down so that you can prevent any misuse from it as well. One of our customers who uses it is Thomas More University in Belgium. And they want a very teacher-friendly solution. So they're looking for a studio environment where a teacher can come in and start recording classroom content. But of course, like a lot of teachers, they don't really want to mess around with the technology in place. So the Pearl Mini was the choice of that school and many, many other schools. But we also see Pearl Minis used, like you said earlier, in podcast studio environments, in live event settings where they want to set the technician up for success. They want to put something in a room that anybody can operate. Yep. Pearl Mini is your friend in all of those cases. Okay, I do see a couple of questions coming in, so why don't we jump over there for a sec.
Cool.
We have somebody asking from Tom. Hey, Tom. Is there a plan to add Dante audio and NDI video support into the 2-channel models for smaller classrooms? So if you're thinking classrooms, you've got Pearl Nexus, which we'll get to, which is really the most suitable for a classroom, and also the Mini. So what's the story on, let's start with NDI.
Yeah, well, NDI, we already accept NDI-HX, I should mention. High bandwidth NDI is limited to the Pearl 2 and will likely stay at that. NDI-HX is still a great quality
So you can have
signal.
a network camera at the back of your classroom and not have to run cabling and get that into your device.
Exactly.
Way to go. And then on the Dante side?
Yep, Dante, we're working on it, something we want to bring to our devices for sure.
Yeah, it's something that we've heard pretty clear feedback from people that they're excited about that, so we're excited about it as well.
Yep.
We have a couple of other questions. Looking for a mini 4K device with more 4K inputs. That's from Fareed. So we do have a couple of 4K options for you here, Fareed. One is mini, and one has many inputs, but you do not get mini and many inputs in the same form factor, I'm afraid. But we'll talk a little bit more about Pearl 2 in a little while. But you do have Nano, which has the 4K add-on, which will give you 4K HEVC encoding. So
Yep.
maybe that works for you, but hang on and we'll get to Pearl 2 and maybe that suits you. We see someone from Jorge saying you lost power at the tech table and then the footage was corrupted on your Pearls. And that's a story we've heard time and again from any customer where when you lose power, things go wacky with video files. I've actually heard more good stories about Pearl, and whereas when you unplug a Pearl and plug it back in, it will resume recording again, and it has saved more bacon than I think it has lost. But you would know better. You talk to more customers.
Yes. So with Pearl, you get to choose what your container is that you're actually saving files into. We, by default, choose MP4. MP4 has fault tolerance. And so if your power does go off and that that Pearl device shuts off, there's a very good chance that you can recover most, if not pretty much all of the data, maybe minus some seconds. And just if you want to reach out to support@epiphan.com, we can share with you.
So there are some containers where that's less of a problem, and maybe
MPEG TS is like really great, and then MOV would be one of the ones that isn't great at all.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. So keep those questions coming. We'll jump to them throughout today's show, and we'll keep an eye on the chat here. So. Okay, let's keep moving on, and where we're at Pearl Mini, so now we're moving on to Pearl Nexus.
Yes, sir.
The latest, greatest.
The latest and greatest, the smallest 1U form factor guy we have here that does the most. So this would be your 3-channel multiple layout device, very similar to a Pearl Mini in technicals, but this is built for the classroom environment, built for permanent installs, which is really going to be controlled by automation, controlled by external systems. This goes in the rack. There's no buttons or anything on it. It's just all controlled externally. We see this a lot with Panopto, Cultura, Yuja, OpenCast, things like that, where it is truly controlled by something external.
It's like we seem to have two paradigms of users. We have users who are really using the device in a room and they're pushing buttons and they're making it happen, and it's kind of a temporary event space where they need people to come in and use it and go. And then we have quite a lot of customers who are using it more from an IT perspective, where they install it in many rooms and they want to control it from somewhere centrally. So as you can imagine with both those use cases, there's some where you don't really need that front screen control, you don't need those buttons on it, and so that's why Pearl Nexus came to be. And it has become our most popular product of late because there's so many higher ed institutions and legal and government customers who just want something that they know is going to record, it's going to capture, it's going to stream every time, and they want it to be able to integrate with all of their other systems. You talked about those logos off the top, the Kalturas, the Panoptos, the Crestrons and Extrons. So this has been really great for our customers, I think.
And a nice segue to that, speaking of IT, is that our devices here can integrate with LDAP. You can add CA certificates. They have brute force pass protection. They have all these security settings built in to work in these environments that have those higher needs, government, education, things like that. So and that's really important because those customers, they need those types of things, and we can provide that.
Let me show this. You can see a little example of how it works here and how you can kind of connect whatever you want, just like any of our other devices. They're very flexible, whether it's an NDI input or a computer or a camera. You bring that in, and then you can either create layouts from it or, in a lot of cases, just record those inputs and stream them out to your audience.
Absolutely.
You'll soon be seeing us talk a little bit more about this customer, UNLV, in Las Vegas. They have installed 200 Pearl Nexus units for classroom capture, and it's become their default. So when they build a new classroom, they put a Pearl Nexus in it, and it records everything for them, and it seems to be working brilliantly. So stay tuned for that. Let's bring us to
the Pearl 2.
Pearl 2.
Yep. So Pearl 2 is going to be, like we mentioned, your 6-channel.
It's hiding here. Let's pull it out.
It's hiding.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can lift it. We'll see.
Come on, Ryan.
It's actually about 15 pounds. So we have this Pearl 2. So this is our flagship device. Comes in a rack mount version as well, 19-inch 2U. And so what this is going to be our flagship, our workhorse. You can bring in up to 6 video sources, audio sources. Those can be NDI, this can be NDI-HX, SRT, RTSP, and they can be a mix of those things too. It doesn't need to be all hardline HDMI and SDI. You can have HDMI, SDI, RTSP, whatever you'd like. And then this is going to be used for where you need to have all those sources recorded. So we see it a lot in the UX study. things like that, or big productions where you have multiple sources, or maybe in this case where we're switching between multiple cameras. Right now we have 4 or 5 cameras hooked up to a Pearl 2 in our environment here, and we can switch between those on the fly, and we'll record those all in ISO as well with the Pearl 2. So you have your kind of standard inputs in the back, just like the other devices, 4 HDMIs, 2 SDI, as well as those 4 line level inputs. It says 2 HDMI outputs, so that means you could route one output again to a capture card running to a computer, as well as to a confidence monitor inside the room, which is really helpful to have that kind of multi-output capabilities for this device.
We have a question from Ben asking if the Pearl 2 will have dual NICs. And maybe before you get into that, you can describe what a dual NIC is, or a dual network interface.
Yes, so a dual network interface would be 2 network adapters or 2 network inputs, RJ45 inputs on the back of a device. Typically, these are used when you need to have a device connecting to an internet connected network as well as an AV network where you might have your sources, your IP sources, things like that. Right now, as you can see, all of our devices have one, but in October, we will be integrating or bringing out a feature that you'll be able to connect a USB dongle to Pearl Nexus, Pearl Mini, and Pearl 2. And then that will bring that functionality of having that dual network port, and you'll be able to choose and what data you want where type of thing. So,
yeah, it seems to be really popular amongst a certain audience. I would say the IT-focused audience
definitely
cares about that.
Yeah.
When I talk to our live event audience, it seems to be less of an issue there. But Ben, I'd love to know what your use case is, why you want to use dual NICs. So keep those questions coming. This is great. I can see a few more in here, which we'll get to for sure today. Let's see. In fact, do I have all these other ones answered? If Epiphan has looked at AVB, do you know what AVB is?
AVB.
Dante ecosystem might be too expensive for most churches and schools. AVB can get people with limited funding into larger scale things. I'm going to say I haven't, but I'll talk to our product people afterwards, and maybe thanks for the tip. We'll look into it more. How many layouts are in a Nexus channel?
You can have 16 plus if you want. We generally recommend 16 for a Pearl Nexus, but you could have more than that. It really depends on what you're doing. If you have 3 channels, maybe 16. If you have 1 channel, you can do 32, whatever. So yeah.
You can get quite creative with those layouts. We're not really demonstrating that here today, and we're doing pretty basic things like picture-in-picture, but you can incorporate graphics, you can do scaling, you can do cropping, you can make a pretty slick-looking production. You can do media playback on it. You can do a lot of things. So we're not flexing as much as we often do in the studio because we're a bit short-handed today, but I encourage you to try. A couple more questions here. Can the Nano record directly to a network drive or automatically transfer completed recordings to a network drive? So I don't think we really talked about the whole automatic file upload thing. You're kind of jumping ahead in the presentation, but that's perfect. Let's talk about that now. So what can I do with recordings on one of these?
Yeah, so all of our devices can integrate with a file endpoint, whether that is a USB drive, an Amazon S3 bucket, FTP server, SFTP server, whatever it is. And so that means that if you were doing your recordings, they'd be recorded first the internal storage, and then they can be transferred after that recording is done to that network location or USB. You can also set a schedule, which means that let's say you're doing a bunch of streaming in a day and you don't want those uploads to take your bandwidth. You can set a schedule on Pearls to say, I want to upload when no one's here. And then you can upload between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning when no one's on the network doing anything. So all the devices can do that. They can do that with the current firmware. So yeah, absolutely possible.
Yeah, quite a lot of flexibility when it comes to file storage. And even though you're seeing SD card slots on some of these, in most cases there's a hard drive that you can, actually in all cases, you can use a hard drive as well and installed in it as well. So you can usually do what you want to do when it comes to the file management side of things. Okay, I do see some more questions in here, but we were just kind of wrapping up the Pearl 2 conversation. So we'll wrap that up and then we'll come back and get to the rest of these. I see some other questions about NDI and USB ports and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Where were we? All right, so we were talking about Pearl 2. We've got all these beautiful ports galore. You can. I had one customer from the University of Nebraska say, he has a Pearl 2 and he uses it for crash test testing, where he's got trying to test roadside equipment. Anyway, he's using a Pearl 2 to capture all this footage, and he says, whatever you can throw at it, there's a way to get it in there and do with it what you want. And I find the rear photo on here kind of illustrates that, and that I can connect, 12G SDI, I can connect XLR audio, so you can kind of do what you want with these devices, which is what I think has made them so popular.
Absolutely.
Here's an example of a fairly lightweight use case here where I'm just connecting 3 sources and some audio, and then I'm streaming that out to my audience. So that's kind of what you're seeing with one of our customers, Mike Salas, who has a company called Masavi Pro, where he is, I'd call him a streaming wizard. He comes into companies like Disney or Pixar where they have very demanding requirements to make sure that their streams get to anywhere in the world. So he's streaming to a global audience, and he relies almost entirely on the Pearl system to make sure that they capture what is in that room and then stream it out to that audience. And I think with a device like Pearl, he knows that he can kind of show up on site, and whatever they're going to throw at him, he's going to be able to figure it out. Whether it's routing it from one place in the facility to the other side, or streaming it to one set of customers, or doing multi-streams to multi platforms, he can do all of that with Pearl 2. So a fairly typical live event use case for the Pearl family. But obviously, we go much beyond live events when it comes to Pearl 2. So maybe you want to talk about these folks.
Yeah. So Hawaii Court has been used, or State of Hawaii has been using Pearl 2 for a while now, and they basically use this for their public hearings. And so they bring in multiple sources, and they do this quad view. And then what they do is they bring in also a Zoom host as well, and then so you can see the Zoom proceedings and everything, and get that kind of interactive engagement all within the same stream from the single device, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then Verdict Advantage.
Verdict Advantage, this is a legal company. They set up mock courtrooms or moot courtrooms, I believe, and they teach people how to do law very well and how the AV works in those spaces. And if you're in a courtroom, you have a lot of different camera feeds of a lot of different images, and you're trying to push those feeds around that room to different people, or you're trying to live stream that content to an external audience. So once again, just trying to capture footage from somewhere and get it to somewhere else. Pearl is really good at that.
Yeah.
I know it's a really blunt explanation of what a Pearl does, but it's kind of accurate. With the recording,
Well, I think that's a good point. Like you want a device that does the work and does it right and does it every time, and that's where we sit. And I think Verdict is a really good example here because they're using Pearl. They're bringing in 6 sources. They're doing that ISO recording, 6 channels all the time, and then it does their work for them.
And like Ryan mentioned, it does come in a rack mount form factor, which is in fact more popular than our desktop model. Maybe we should be pulling it out higher on the desk when we talk about the product line, but
not enough space on the desk here. It's too much stuff.
It is more convenient, yeah. So let me pull up these questions here. Lots of engagement I see, which is great. Okay, so I see SRT is new for me. Will appreciate any example videos. That's from Hussam as well. And Hussam, there's quite a lot of content around SRT on our blog and on our YouTube channel. So I would say go there. You'll see us doing some crazy stuff with SRT. And I'd say it's really brilliant for sending video from one place to another place.
Yep.
It's not a streaming platform where you're going to stream to YouTube on it, even though that's a coming feature. And that's what we think of when we think of streaming. But if I want to stream from my house to your house, SRT is going to be our best friend.
Yep. Especially if you want it to be encrypted, you want lower latency. You want to go over unreliable networks. SRT is fantastic.
Yeah, we're big fans. We're big fans here, and it's
yeah.
powerful. So I hope you enjoy it as much as we do.
Yep.
Do the USB port output to a PC for video calls? So I'm assuming this is from Michael, wanting to connect one of our Pearl devices to a Zoom call.
Yeah. So the USB input is video input only for the Mini Pearl 2 and Pearl Nexus. If you want to get out a a video feed from a Pearl device to a Zoom call, then you usually connect to HDMI to a capture card and bring that in. Then you get the full value of production you're doing here. And like if you're going HDMI output, you don't need to have your program output. You can play out an input, whatever you'd like. So it's a good way of getting out to system.
Do you have a capture card handy, Ryan?
I do have a capture card. I have 3 capture cards handy. Imagine that.
Great.
Who put these here? So we have this is the one we probably see most often. And the cool thing about the Nexus here is we've actually built it that you can just strap it in here with your actual inside your rack, and so it's meant to be integrated. These are robust cards. They're aluminum enclosure. They use not a whole lot of power, and they're UVC. So you can connect them to your Mac, Linux, Windows computer, whatever it might be, and they'll work. And they have a 3.5mm input here if you want to run a microphone directly into it.
Right. Okay. So keep those questions coming. We'll spend most of the rest of today talking really about what your questions are. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the automations you can do on Pearl towards the end, and we'll talk a little bit about cloud and how you can centrally manage your devices. But we'd love to spend most of our time here talking about your questions, so keep them coming. Next question, what data rates are supported for recording 6 NDI HX streams parallel?
You kind of get to choose what you want your encoding to be on the system. The data from the camera is going to be decided by that camera. I think usually for 1080p it's somewhere around 9 megabit per second for a HX signal.
So over our 1 gigabit
You're fine.
Ethernet connection,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a bottleneck
Not
there on the
a
network.
concern, no.
So you really don't have any limits when it comes to NDI-HX because it's a light enough weight that we can handle whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's really only high bandwidth NDI that you have to worry about a bit because it can be much, much, much larger screens.
Do you have to set up the Pearl Nexus inputs? Like say I'm using SDI input with analog input. So how do you mix and match these all these ports on your
Yeah,
Pearl?
so we have some great videos of this online that you can watch, and it shows you exactly how to configure a Pearl channel, but it's just a matter of just grabbing your SDI input, you put it inside a layout, and you choose your audio source, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
And then you can mix and match them with other video sources as you want. You know, put logos, things like that. So it is pretty simple, and you can create things quite simply.
Yep.
Yeah.
We currently have the Pearl 2. Can any of the USB ports be used as a webcam output? We talked a little bit about that. So you'd have to have a capture card if you want to do that kind of workflow.
Correct.
That's from Derwin. Any plans to beef up the Pearl 2 to allow more streams? I like the way you're thinking. I'm excited about a beefier Pearl 2 as well. This is me talking.
I like beefy too.
but
Beefy's good.
Elaine, oh shoot, questions is gone. Anyway, where did it go? Here we go. I'm currently due up to 7 streams and know I'm pushing the system. Now, if it's 1 channel and 7 streams,
Elaine. I know Elaine.
You know Elaine?
I know.
Okay.
Hello, Elaine.
and is she doing too much with her Pearl 2?
Well, Elaine uses the Pearl 2 to the maximum potential, as you'd say. Maximum effort, I would say, is going into that. But yes, it's 7 NDI streams to a Pearl 2. We suggest 6. Can you do more than what we suggest? Sure. We make conservative recommendations because we want the system to do everything else we say it can do. But yeah, it's I think what Elaine is doing is fine, and they've been doing it for a while. So. Yeah.
But to answer your question, we don't have an immediate product coming out that's going to be more powerful than Pearl 2, but we have a lot of whiteboarding happening right now around future products, so stay tuned. Okay, is there a plan to add audio onto it? We did that one. Can Pearl 2 be split into 3 virtual rooms like the new tech Capture Cast, i.e. to use it as 3 rooms and 2 signals to 3 Panopto streams? So I think I know what they're asking here.
Yeah.
They want to be represented as 3 virtual remote recorders. This is getting into the weeds of a Panopto workflow, so we wouldn't spend too much time on here because there's probably only some of your Panopto customers, but the short answer is no. You can't represent a Pearl as 2 devices in the land of Panopto.
No, not as a recorder right now within Panopto.
Yep.
Can you record multiple rooms? Sure, you can do that, but not
seen as one.
Yep.
Okay. Can you initiate and stop streams and switch layouts from a QSys? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what can I do with a QSys or a Crestron or an Extron. What can I do there?
So most of the control that is for Pearl would be, starting recording, starting streaming, changing things with the system. That can all be changed and modified with REST API, and that's what those modules for QSys, Extron, and Crestron are using. So absolutely, you control that. The module that currently exists for QSys has layout switching, recording control, streaming control, and you can easily modify and adjust and send commands to certain pins if you're a QSys developer.
You can show those previews.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so you can command the system with the module. Yeah, right out of the box.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I also want to push to Panopto, but record locally in 4K. That's from Elaine. Elaine, you can do that.
You can do that with a 4K channel, and if you want to do 1080p, it all depends on the number of channels you want to do and the amount of ISOs you would like to have. So with a Pearl with a Pearl 2, we do recommend a single 4K 30 channel. Can you put on 2 1080p 30s on top of that? Probably, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But then again, I think then we're talking about what Elaine wants is that kind of beefier system where they want to do a little bit more.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but I love seeing these requests. These go back into our product roadmap where we hear all these people are asking for things like Farid here who wants to do 10-bit and HDR on Pearl 2. You can't do that today, Farid, but that's the kind of comment we'll be bringing back to our product team. So not today. We got a comment from Elaine here. Yeah, Panopto overrides it to 1080. Panopto, they don't want your 4K footage, but we love it. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay. maybe we'll jump back into the presentation for a minute here and talk a little bit about some of the automation capabilities of a Pearl, and talk a little bit about what you can do with Epiphan Cloud or Epiphan Edge here. So I'll pull up our presentation here. And okay, so Epiphan Edge, maybe you can just give a brief introduction to what people can do with this.
Yeah. So, and we're actually gonna demo this in a
Great.
moment as well.
Okay.
This is basically your command center for Epiphan. So it's your cloud-based configuration for monitoring, remote access control, real-time alerting, and basically just your time saver. And you can manage a host of devices, 400 devices as an example, with just a few people from a single pane of glass. And so that's really the point of Epiphan Edge and Cloud here. So if we're going to jump right into it, we're looking at Epiphan Cloud right here. If we maybe we'll go to the full laptop there, perfect. And this is where you see your devices. So it's all ran basically off teams here, as in teams being teams within Epiphan. So you can create a team and you can pair your devices to that team. And then this can be shared with other folks at your institution. So maybe you have a few admins that you want to be managing your devices. Well, you could simply just add them to this team. They can use their own passwords to log into this team, and then you can everyone who you have added to it can control and manage their devices. So if we scroll down here, we can see we have multiple devices paired to this team called Epiphan Showcase, and we can click into the devices to see what's going on here and what's happening inside the channels, and if there's any events coming up. And this is the really cool thing about the automation, is that you can schedule events via Epiphan Edge on your Pearl devices that are paired. And so you could simply just press add event, and then you could choose a time you want the event to happen, what destination you want to stream to, if you want to record, and then press create. And then you can have events that just pop up here, all controlled by Epiphan Edge without needing a CMS or anything like that. They'll start on the fly. Pearl downloads a schedule from Edge. And then so if you lose network connectivity or something like that, the events are still going to start up all by themselves, regardless of network connectivity, which is a really nice feature. And then finally, when you're looking at the alerts, so say you have a shared managed team here, you could have alerts that are emailed out to folks depending on who is logging in. So George is logged in right now. You could say that George wants to monitor auditorium and breakout room. Well, I could also log into this team, and then you'd see my email here if I logged in. I won't see the alerts that George selected, but I can select my own alerts. And so then you can have multiple people using the same team getting their own customized alerts for the device they actually need to be paying attention to. So it saves a lot of time for attention, it saves a lot of hassle, and is a really great place to manage an entire fleet of devices. You can do things like group actions. So say a firmware update comes out, you can press all your devices. If there's a firmware update, we don't have any here. There it is. You can update all your devices and then click, and then you don't need to go room by room or anything like that. It's all available and manageable, with just a couple clicks.
Mm-hmm. I must say, we use Edge
all the time.
Even if it's only a couple of devices.
Yeah.
And while there are some of those features that you saw, like scheduling, which is a paid feature, and to get access into the admin side of your devices, most of the benefit of this platform is free. So I always recommend everybody just pair it up there, because you never know when you might need remote access, and that's usually the case where someone just wants to pop in. Oh, like the person on site is not as skilled as the person remotely, so to be able to have that kind of remote access is extremely valuable for I find for most of our customers. Well, I recognize there's a lot of live event people who say internet is for not for us. So hopefully you can still find benefit from it for some use cases.
Yep.
But we were talking about scheduling. There's a little bit more in terms of the automation side of what we can do here, like config presets. I can pull up the laptop here and show that.
Yeah, so we have a configuration presets for Pearl devices, and what this is, and this can be applied in different ways, is you can say you got a school bought 50 Pearl devices. They want to integrate them all with the basically as efficiently as possible. Let's say they all have similar setups. They could configure one Pearl device, grab the configuration from that device, and then apply that to every other device that's the same model. So if they're all Pearl Nexuses, they can apply that configuration to all Pearl Nexus devices. This can be applied with a USB, which is really great for our live events customers because then they can have a USB with configuration presets. They give it to their tech. The tech just plugs in the USB. They choose the configuration they want from one of the devices that have a touchscreen or a display, and then it applies. Or in a case where we might have using Epiphan Edge, you could apply one configuration across a whole fleet of devices with a click. And then that's gonna save you loads and loads of time, lots of walking around, things like that. And so it's a really great way to manage your devices and set them up quite quickly.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump a little bit more back into the questions here. Keep them coming if you've got them. We've got somebody asking, do you support AMX Muse as a controller?
So effectively, AMX, I've seen customers use AMX controllers. They just use a REST API. So if you have someone who knows how to program an HTTP type commands, then yeah, no problem. Yep.
Does our scheduling tool support an iCal file? And does this work in Panopto? Which is fine. I like the Panopto questions. This is great.
Yeah, keep going.
No, we don't support an iCal file for scheduling, and maybe Panopto does. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Panopto does. They have multiple integrations.
Yeah. So you'd go iCal, Panopto, and that would trigger every event to happen on Pearl.
So to tack onto that question here, if you did have Panopto events, you would absolutely see all those events in the events tab in Epiphan as just as you saw the actual Edge events. So absolutely, you'd see all your events there. You could even start those events early, stop them from Epiphan Edge, even if they're from Panopto, Culture, or whatever. It's all accessible at the same place.
Okay, where can I read more about the remote access and use? I want to learn more about that. Honestly, Pat, go to our website. There's a lot of stuff there around remote management. There's stuff on our blog. There's stuff on our YouTube channel. So we're not shy about it. We've talked about those customers like Heffel and explained in some of those use cases how they're doing that. And of course, you should call Ryan. Ryan likes to talk about this stuff, and he's available on our live chat, on our support lines most of the time.
I thought you were going to say 24/7.
We only let him in this room like 1 hour a day, but 23 hours a day he's available. So.
That's right.
Okay, are any of these are examples of these workflows of using these encoders to push content to digital signs across a university campus or similar size space? So that's from Nathan. Do you have stories about digital signage use cases with Pearl?
Yeah. So typically with digital signage, we would see multicast streaming being used. So you'd have a multicast enabled network, and then you could stream RTP, UDP, or MPEG-TS across that network to a device that's distributing that stream to displays. Typically, that's what we would see. All Pearl devices can do unicast streaming, but these really aren't designed to be content distribution in that sense. So you could do 6 to 10 off Nano and up to 50 to 100 off of a Pearl 2. But to be more scalable, we do suggest using multicast streaming. That's the best way of doing that.
Yeah, I've heard from lots of other event spaces. Like I remember it was the WWF and other big sporting agencies and stuff who are just trying to push content from one place to another place on site, which is really digital signage, and they would quite often use Pearl for that. Can Pearl stream directly to YouTube and Vimeo? That's from Scott, and yes, of course it can. It can stream anywhere.
We're doing that right now.
And you can do both of them at the same time, and you can add 4 more if you wait, as well.
You could add many more than that if you wanted to.
You can, yeah. Go nuts.
You're mostly limited by your ISP or your actual upstream rather than the hardware in most cases.
Yeah. Any plans to bring the ability to stream from your CDN? Oh, I see what you mean. So streaming from Epiphan Edge. I'm guessing that's what you mean. That's by Hussam. We don't have a restreaming engine. We still stream directly from the device to the streaming destination. We control it through our Edge, but we don't do any native restreaming on our platform right now.
You could add RTMP destinations and share them with OnCloud through all your devices. So say if you had, George wants his YouTube video, his YouTube stream, and he wants to move that between devices, all in Epiphan Cloud or Edge, absolutely, you wouldn't need to go configure anything in Pearl, but it's not a CDN. It doesn't distribute anything. It is controlling these devices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking through the chat here. If there's any more questions, now's a great time because we'll probably wrap up in a minute or two here as I feel like we've gotten through most of the info here. But I see lots of great people talking stories about what they're doing with their Pearls. I'm trying to set up a new Pearl with 3 inputs. This is from Ken. Trying to set up a new Pearl with 3 inputs, 2 HDMIs, and SDI. Are there settings that we need to change to add the SDI to the channels? I tried to add it, but all I'm getting is a black screen. So some live tech support here.
That's right. No, so all you need to do is just, if you wanted to add, say, 3 layouts, you'd have 3 layouts. If you want to switch between those, you just add HDMI sources to one. You could add SDI to another. If you're seeing a black screen, it's probably something to do with the source, or maybe cabling would be my interpretation of that. SDI doesn't really have any encryption or anything that can be possible there, so I would take a look at that. But if you still see that and you've checked your cabling, you've made sure your source is on, there's nothing else strange going on in the environment, if anything in the middle of that, then just reach out to support@epiphan.com. We can help you out. There's some great videos online too. The Nexus demo, 30-minute demo Dan did, is perfect for explaining how to configure a channel and things like that. Definitely recommend checking that one out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you recommend for closed captioning and SDH subtitles during live broadcasts?
So we don't currently support embedded CC or anything like that right now. We do have a device called a live script, which you could effectively overlay transcriptions over top of video sources and things like that within layouts. But we don't have a true closed captioning type integration right now.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I think we're getting, I think we got it all. Forgive me if I missed one of your questions here. There's a lot going on here, but I'm pretty sure we covered everybody's questions.
I got the easy part of this. I'm just sitting here and watching you do all the work.
You just keep looking pretty, and I'll do all the work here. Okay. But I think that's great. You've covered everything. We haven't really covered one little topic, though, which we did want to get to, which is about how to let customers choose which Pearl to get to. So let's go over that briefly, because I'm sure it's a question you get 10 times a day. Which Pearl's right for me? So let's do that. Let's do it like a Teen Vogue style, like for the questionnaire kind of thing. No?
Okay. Maybe. I'll see.
And we do have a couple of slides to support that, so I'll just pull that up here. Okay. Ryan, let it go, let it rip.
All right, so how to choose your Pearl. So basically where we start off is there's 4 questions. Inputs, resolutions, output, and if you need advanced features. So inputs, you'd be looking at, say if you need 1 to 2 inputs into a device, you're not looking to do any live switching, then Pearl Nano is going to be your ticket there. If you're switching upstream and just need a add-on recorder streamer, Pearl Nano, that's what you're going to want. If you're going with 2 to 3 inputs, Pearl Mini, Pearl Nexus. Permanent installs where it's controlled by something completely external, whether automation, and then this would be more of where you want that touchscreen to be used in those shared environments, the easiest possible thing. Someone walks in, they press a button. If you want 2 or 3 inputs, switch between those inputs, that's the way to do it. If you want 6 inputs or more, or 4+ inputs, Pearl 2 is where you want to look at. Next up is resolution. All of our devices do 1080p. If you want 4K, then you're looking at Pearl Nano and Pearl 2. Outputs, all of them except the Pearl 2 have those 2 HDMI outputs. Pearl 2 has 2. Pearl Nano does have that pass-through here, which allows you to connect that straight HDMI, basically splits right off the back end to a projector or something like that. And then advanced features, if you want NDI, NDI-HX, that is Pearl Nexus Mini Pearl 2. If you want high bandwidth NDI or chroma keying, then you're looking into Pearl 2.
Okay. I'm just checking to see if we have any more questions, but I think we're.
I think that's pretty well it.
Okay. Okay, here's a question from Mike. Any question being given for the Mini in regards to better access for users choosing which recording on the touchscreen itself, not on the external display? We have instances where 2 or 3 recordings are done by our users overnight, and they can currently only download the last recording that was made.
I'm not sure if you mean like to change it, to transfer those recordings off the system via USB. If you're noticing that you don't have your other recordings that are performed, it might be that your storage is too small. The Pearl devices are built to be loop recorders, so if you run out of storage, it will overwrite the oldest. I'd suggest reaching out to support just so I can further understand your question. I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I assumed it was like to be able to select that file and then move it somewhere, because that's kind of what you can do with a file on a Pearl Mini, right?
Sure.
But he should be able to do anything he needs here with that. So anyway,
Yeah, if you're not seeing your last recording, it might be a storage size issue. So you just reach out. We'll talk about that.
Great. Let's see, Tom, if you want to do closed captioning for YouTube, for example, you'd use Stream Text, which is the YouTube API. There's a lot of closed captioning that is happening post-stream as well that
Yes.
we'll see. Like once you
Yeah.
get it up into the cloud, there's a million services that can add closed captioning to it if you don't mind it. But of course, there are use cases where you need to have it in the room all the way up.
Yep.
Will we publish a recording of this? Yes, this recording will be available, and we'll always do that for our webinars. And we tend to do these webinars every month or two. So if you want to come back and shoot the breeze with us, we'd be more than happy. So, and yes, Mike has clarified here, looking to transfer via USB.
Right.
So can Mike go in and select which recordings to transfer?
Yes, you absolutely can. You can put a USB in, and you could add those actually back to the automatic file upload, or if you're doing the manual transfer USB, which is a setting within Pearl for external USB drive, then you can choose which files you actually do want to be moved
Just make
off
sure your
the
device
system.
is updated so you have the most recent firmware. 'Cause I know that feature was added a little bit
Yeah,
later.
for sure. Either way, reach out and we can walk through it. So.
Yeah. Will is asking, we'll just keep going on questions for a while. We don't have any more presentation here, but we'll happily sit here and just shoot the breeze on questions if you would like. So Will is asking, I'm new to video, thrown into deep end. We have a Vadio matrix mix, a PC controller, and manage 3 cameras from a PC. It's kind of old. Vadio feeds the Pearl Mini for streaming. Could we do away with the Vadio?
Sure. You could run the cameras directly into Pearl Mini. You have 3 of them, so you could switch between those if you'd like, if that's the use case.
If you're only routing video into your streaming and recording system, yes, you could absolutely. If you need to be able to split that video off and send it somewhere else, you'd need something before Pearl, and maybe that Vadio is doing that job for you. But we do have a lot of customers who have matrices, and they're trying to figure out, do they need them to work with their Pearl, and a lot of them are finding they can do everything they need within the Pearl. They just put everything into Pearl, and because it has a couple of outputs, they can send that content where it needs to go. So
yeah. I think it's important to note that basically all these devices, the Nano is a little bit outside of it, but all these devices effectively replace a full stack of equipment.
yeah,
You know, the Nano doesn't have your switcher inside of it here, but all these devices can do a lot for what they are, for sure.
Rick wants to know if you can transfer a Pearl Mini config to a Pearl 2, and the answer is
No.
no.
The reason being they are different platforms. We can't transfer it to and from. But if you create one configuration on a Pearl 2, then you can apply it to any other Pearl 2 you'd like.
Yeah. Okay. I like when a question from Scott starts. Guys, I know next to zero about anything in video or technology. So, Scott's got an AVIO HD device and turned Canon into a zoom camera. What can a mere mortal use the Pearl Nano for? As in Zoom or Teams video with clients, for example. So if I'm a Zoom and Teams guy, let's say that's my life. Maybe that's Scott. That's your world. What function would a Pearl Nano offer to someone like Scott?
So there's a few options. If you were to, basically the Pearl Nano would kind of, you would put the capture card ahead or ahead the Pearl Nano. So you could run your video or your camera into a Pearl Nano, and then you could add branding and make it look, quite nice. And then you can maybe stream that off somewhere else, and plus bring it through the capture card into the Zoom computer. This would be for really, you would include this if you wanted to enhance your production, which is further than just having the full frame camera. You could add other things to it.
Yeah, if you want to show off on Zoom and have multiple cameras set up and quickly flip between them, or if you've got,
That would be Pearl Mini
we have
Pro
people who have
Nexus, yeah.
document cameras, or they have other views and they want to just toggle between them quickly on the fly. You could do all of that and then push that into Zoom. Like you can see on this multi-view here, like Brian and I we have a number of options. We've got different cameras we can pull in to show different things, and we can push any of these things we wanted into a Zoom call if we wished, if that was the platform we were on. So
yeah, everything you see here, we could just output via the HDMI and write that into a Zoom call if we wanted to.
Yeah. Is there any way to do firmware updates on multiple units at once to save time? That's from Gregory, and yes, you can do that using our cloud tool called Epiphan Edge. Select all your devices, update firmware, boom, it's your very best friend.
Absolutely.
Bjorn is asking, can you pass the metadata to the Pearl 2 for recording in the form of an XML file or via the media controller?
We do support XML for streaming settings, so you could do that.
But you can't do what Bjorn is asking.
I don't know, not specifically. It would be for controlling your streaming settings.
Yeah.
I believe
Interesting question, Bjorn. I wouldn't mind learning a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Derwin wants to know, will you add an internal capture card to any Pearl 2 devices? I think my internal capture card, there are capture cards inside of our devices. In fact, that's how they operate, right? They capture that footage. Maybe, so I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Derwin. We do talk about being able to do USB out of our devices, so you wouldn't need a capture card going into your Zoom computer if that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah. Well, right now they can't do that, but that's something that we get asked about a lot. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're getting close to the end. Oh, Derwin wants to send a webcam stream.
Yeah.
out.
So we already talked about that. Yeah. So USB out, not possible right now. You would take HDMI and convert that to USB going to your
And a lot of people want that as well, Derwin. So I hope you'll see that in the future on our next hardware. Okay. 55 minutes. I think we did it.
I think we're good.
We did it.
Do we high five? What do we do? Do we hug? Like, what happens?
We do that after off
Oh,
camera.
okay.
You know
Okay,
the
okay.
rituals around here. Okay. Thanks to everybody who watched today. We'll be back here soon, 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. We'll do another one of these and we'll shoot the breeze with you. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.